Welcome back. You are watching The Core, and we are discussing the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme of the Federal Government of Nigeria. Now, Mr. Folorunsho, you've been responsible for advising clients, particularly about this scheme, but tax in general. What has been going on with your clients? What are they telling you about the process? Well,
basically, if you look at those who have attempted to declare and those who have been declaring, their fear has been, how are we sure our information is secured? Okay, will this information fall into the hand of kidnappers and all that?
Kidnappers.
And then again, there are some states that have not, really taken on board or things that this is not really for them. They don't understand what VAIDS is all about. So those who even want to declare have difficulty in approaching the tax authority. Again, people have the fear that, see, this is something that I've spent, I've agreed, I've made money, and I've bought houses, I've spent some of them to send my children to school. Where will I get the money? Okay, can government just start from 2018 going forward and let the bygone be bygone, and then they will move forward and continue to pay their taxes? Those are the major challenges.
So, Honourable Minister, he's raised a few issues there, and some of them are things I actually wanted. For example, the law is retroactive, but it goes back, I think, only 6 years. So, first question is, why not start this year? Why not 10 years? What was the rationale behind taking it back 6 years?
Well, I think the first thing to emphasize is this is a voluntary scheme. So people have a choice. They can decide not to participate in VAIDS and take their chances on the consequences, which I don't advise, incidentally, and I'm sure he doesn't advise either. But let's look at it from the position of fairness. Most of the taxpayers we have in Nigeria today are salary earners, PAYE earners.
What's the percentage of...
They're about 94% of our taxpayers.
Of 100% of people who pay, 94 are people who earn...
I think we have about 14 million taxpayers, and about 13.5 are PAYE. So those are people whose income tax is deducted at source. So would it be then fair, and those are largely lower income earners, salary earners. So would it then be fair for those who made the most, who have the most, to now be given, forgiveness, and we say, okay, from now on? Because if we do that, then we should then refund the taxes of all those who've actually paid. So even in the spirit of fairness, we think it's right the way we've designed it. And remember, we're waiving penalties, we're waiving interest. If you were supposed to have paid tax 7 years ago, you've already benefited, because the interest that accrues on, or would have accrued on that money, is being waived. The penalty which the law says you should pay is being waived. On the issue he raised about those who have spent the money, and that's a very common problem. We get a lot of people who come into our offices and say, yes, truly, because we send out letters. So they come in sometimes panicking, say, okay, I spent the money. And even the house I bought, I can't sell it. The tenants have moved out. In those cases, we are approaching the governors. We approached all the governors and we said, please, if people want time to pay, agree to give them time to pay.
So under this scheme, people can sort of do an instrumental agreement where they pay a little at a time?
Well, yes. Okay. It's at the discretion of the governors for personal tax, and it's at the discretion of the chairman for companies tax. So we've made it as user-friendly as we can. But the idea that we should waive and then start again from this year, I think is not fair.
Yeah, okay. Now, Mr. Fowler, he raised another issue around the sanctity of the information that people are sharing with the tax authorities in order to take part in this scheme. Are you assuring people that their information is safe?
Well, definitely. And let me talk on behalf of the Joint Tax Board, which also incorporates the state revenue agencies. By law, they're not supposed to share your information with any third party. And there are consequences if that information is given out illegally.
Right. So, but outside issues of somebody doing something voluntarily, so if we cannot assume everybody will abide by that, what about the sort of hardware that protects this information, the security of where you keep this information? Are you confident about that?
Well, I'm quite confident. And what we're actually doing with the state internal revenue services is that we're compiling all the information they have, so we'll have a central database, and that will certainly be under lock and key, and we'll have limited access. So instead of going into a tax office where you have a lot of papers and ledgers and things that can easily be copied or taken away, it will be computer-based.
Now, Honourable Minister, I want to ask one last question because I want to start bringing in the audience. The issue I've heard a few times from a few people is that there's a way in which this scheme can actually be utilized to clean up illicit wealth. Because if 6 years ago you did something wrong and you got money and you bought an asset, you can now just come and pay tax on it, and essentially you've laundered that money and cleaned it up and made it legitimate. Is this something that you took into account when you were considering this policy?
Yes, I mean, there's always a risk. But from our experience, and we did a study incidentally, of about 5 countries who had done this before, and some of them have similar corruption problems. We went to Indonesia, I believe, Turkey, India, there's one other country, South Africa. So they also have problems of corruption, but it didn't stop other countries running amnesties. It doesn't take away the work that the investigative agencies are doing. But in our experience, we find that those who've really stolen money don't come forward to come and declare for tax. They hide, under the radar. What we're finding largely is that because our economy is so informal, there was just a large number of people making money and not paying anything over a long period of time. So we think that the majority of those who will respond will be in that category. We can't give you an assurance that somebody who made hot money would not decide that let me try and see if I can get away with it under VAIDS. But if the money is hot, eventually the investigative agency should catch up with that person.